Welcome. I'm Halcyon, and this is Hug Nation. Today I want to talk about who am I and where do I end? I had a beautiful conversation with my father this weekend. Now, I have so much admiration for him. I learned so much from him in terms of how to be a man, how to be a grown-up, how to navigate the world and business and politics and righteousness, and he's just a good person. But one thing we do not dialogue often about is spirituality. And so I had wanted to have a conversation about spirituality and what happens after we die. He is now a very healthy man, but he is an older man now. And I had this thought, like, if I never ask him these questions, I'm going to have some regret. So my mom pushed me to have the conversation. It's one that she and I have frequently and go deep, but not so much with Dad. So I asked him some pretty deep questions, and he answered in beautiful ways. Now, his answers are not mine to share, so I will skip the content of how he replied. But one thing, as we were kind of going along, and then we started asking, well, what would you like to have happen? Would you want to have a service? Would you want us to put an obituary? Do you mind if I make up a bunch of stuff in your obituary about your, undersea diving adventures and the time you discovered a new species of tiger? And he said, no, let's just keep it legit. And then we were talking about funeral plans and things. He said, you know what, I don't want to be cremated, I don't think. I was like, really? Why? He goes, well, I don't know, there's something about just the thought of like my body being burned that just feels like really uncomfortable. And so I was like, oh, okay, so if we cremate you, wait till after you're dead? I took a few notes, and he busted up laughing. And it was a really fun, lightheartedness after this pretty deep conversation we were having. But it made me think about a topic that I've addressed occasionally here in Hug Nation, which is that, who are we? What is our body? What is included in the physical us? We tend to think that the skin is this border, and what's inside the skin is us, and what's outside the skin is other. But how true is that? We are in a constant state of flux. We're constantly shedding dead cells. We're constantly creating new cells. Not shells, cells. Well, I don't know. If you're listening to this and you are a hermit crab or a lobster or a crustacean, you are creating new shells. So maybe I spoke correctly the first time. Sorry, hermit crab doesn't make its shell. It finds a new shell. But I think I'm getting off track. You know what I'm saying? We make new cells, and we're constantly ingesting food and converting that. And we are creating blood cells and all sorts of good stuff. We're in this state of flux, excreting. And so where do you draw the line? Alan Watts said that a human being is much more like a whirlpool in a river. You can go to a river every day, and based on the flow of the river, you'll recognize the same spot. You'll recognize it looks the same, it looks the same, it looks the same. But really, it's a vastly, entirely different composition every minute. There's an entirely new structure of water that's flowing through it, in the same way that we are a different structure of cells. And that a place in the river is really just a pattern, in the same way that a human is just a pattern that we recognize based on the construction of this constantly evolving, fluid, changing set of cells. And not just that, we are filled with cells that are not human cells. We have bacteria like crazy. We've got like 39 trillion bacteria cells in us, and only like 30 trillion human cells, most of which are red blood cells. And that number goes down and up quite a bit depending on our recent defecations. I just looked this stuff up, and I just had to let you know the significance of defecation in all of this math. Normally I don't get it into math, but when it involves trillions of cells and defecating, I can't resist. So what about that? Is the bacteria in our gut that helps us digest stuff, is that us? What about the air? At what point is air us? You cannot take a bag and bag up a human and take it out of its environment. It dies. We cannot live within the boundary of our skin. So where do we end? We need the oxygen. And when you start to think of it that way, when you start to think of us that we are a concentration of cells in this massive system, it's just a pattern, but it's a constantly fluid thing, then you start to realize that, oh, it's an entirely arbitrary line where you decide is not you. And then you start to realize, oh, I'm incredibly connected to this air. And this air is incredibly connected to forests. And the forests are incredibly connected to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it all needs to be working together for I to live. Because I am connected to all of it. And when you start to think of it that way and start to feel it that way, then you realize your relationship to nature and the world is vastly different. And doing things that would harm nature, littering, polluting, is actually a form of self-harm. It's like a mental illness. It's like being a cutter. But when you can realize, oh, we're all connected, then you can see the value in all things, the value in all people, the value in all of these systems and how they interact. And the more that we learn about nature, the more we learn how interconnected it is. You know, the competitive tree in the forest is not actually competing with the trees around it. They're sharing resources through the soil, through the mycelium. I didn't go that deep with Dad. We laughed about the cremation. I personally said that I have written on my donor card, I said, I am a donor, but only for traveling exhibits of frozen human forms that travels around to museums. That's how I want my body used. Well, or anything. But where do I begin? Whew, I don't know. Where do I end? Whew, I don't know. I'm enjoying this moment of consciousness to appreciate the fact that we are one. I love you. If you enjoy these transmissions, do me a huge favor and share them. Give them a thumbs up, give them a like. Let people know that this is worth listening to. It would make a big difference in my life. Or join my email list and get to know all the new things that happen, including when my next round of coaching will start at list.hugnation.com. Actually, just search Hug Nation. You can find my YouTube channel, find my iTunes, all the good stuff. I love you.